Hi everyone, today gonna take a closer look at this FC120 ARGB fans coming from Deepcool, as some of you have sent me an email stating that this is a budget friendly fan and it does perform. Now this fan does come with two variants, one is white and the other one is black. I will be showing you what the structure is like, the accessories, and conducting a noise test, and of course the performance of this fan itself on a radiator. With this said, I'd like to thank Deepcool to have provided this 3-pack set for me to share with you. Let's begin. Just for your information, this FC120 fans can be found on their liquid AIO known as the LS520 or the LS720, and it only comes with 3-pack set, 3 in 1, which inside this box it contains 3 fans, the instruction manual, and this box, in fact I've unwrapped everything, which comes with an extension cable, the main core cable, and 3-pack of fan screws, which each have 4 screws. This is for you to mount your fan to your case. Starting with the specification itself, these are all 12-volt DC fans, where each will draw a current of 0.13 ampere. The lowest RPM is at 500, the max RPM is at 1800, and measuring from the top to the bottom, left to the right, is at 120 mm in length. And as for the thickness itself, it's 25 mm thick. In fact, these are all standard fans where you can easily mount them on your case itself or even on liquid AIO, not an issue. Now about the structure of the fan itself, right, the build structure is above average. It does flex a bit, but I would not worry about the flex. Reason being, right, these fans, each side is squarish, where some fans, right, you have gaps at the edge. This does not have it. So when you place it, be it in your case or on a radiator itself, right, there are no gaps, and the squareness of each fans, right, will keep the structure intact, whereby you'll be sturdy, no wobbling. For each fan itself, right, be it the front or the back itself, you'll be ushered with 4 anti-vibration rubber grommets. See, at the back too. Now I noticed that at each corner of the rubber grommets, right, there are some detailing. Nice touch. Flipping to the back, this fan is in fact a 9-blader, and for most 9-bladers, right, they are performance fans. In fact, you will scoop tons of air going through into your case or to the liquid AIO itself. And as mentioned, these are ARGB fans, whereby you have the ARGB effects over here and you will diffuse to the blade itself. Speaking about the ARGB, this does not come with a ARGB controller, so you can connect directly the ARGB connector, right, to your motherboard and to make use of your motherboard ARGB utility to control the effects. Or you can separately purchase a ARGB controller to control the fan effects itself. I'd like to talk about the daisy chain mechanism of this fans from Deepcool, and Deepcool have deliberately done this as in like each fan having a very short cable with a 7-pin unique connector. Now, as you can see over here, I have daisy chain from one fan to another using the cables that is provided on the fan itself. The connection goes like this. The 7-pin itself goes to this 7-pin socket, which is on the fan itself. It only goes in one direction, so when you plug it in, make sure you don't put any force to it. Once you have aligned it properly, right, it will just slot in nicely. See? So making all the cables short, so when you place it, let's say this is your case front and this is the back of the case where your motherboard is and such, you won't be able to see the messy cable, and you don't even have to bother to do the cable ties, you know, to do the cable management itself, because everything is tucked nicely. Now some of you might dislike this kind of connection, but for me, right, it's a well thought method whereby this is supposed to connect to your motherboard fan header to control the fans, and the ARGB to control the ARGB effects. So if this is too short, right, it does come with this extension cable, so whereby you can actually extend. Same thing, slotting into the socket itself, right, do not use any force. Make sure that it aligns properly, and you can just slot it in nicely. And at this end, now you still can't connect this to the motherboard itself, whereby you will be given with this core cable, which is pretty long too. Now, what this does is, when you connect the fan 7-pin end, right, to this core cable, okay, it will split up the formation for you properly. Starting off with this is the ARGB 3-pin 5V connector. So you can connect this to your motherboard and to control the ARGB. Next will be the 4-pin PWM fan connector. Now take note that the 4-pin PWM fan connector, right, it only comes with 2 cables, and one is for the sensor, the other one is for the RPM control, which is done on your motherboard itself. Now, why do they do this and not having the positive and negative cable through here, right? The power drawn is not from your motherboard. So, be it you daisy chain more than 6 fans or such, right, you don't have to worry, because the power drawn is not from the motherboard itself. Instead, you have a dedicated SATA connector, which is on this core itself, core cable, where you draw the power directly from your PSU to supply the power for your fan rotation and the ARGB effect. A well thought solution. This is to safeguard that you will not be overloading the motherboard fan headers or the ARGB headers itself. So direct current from the PSU to supply the power to all your blade rotation and the ARGB effects. Now you might be saying that, oh, this is too long. Probably, let's say you were to place this at the front of the case. Okay, and probably I should do it the other way around. Now this is the front of the case, assuming, and your cables are so long, and your motherboard is over here. Assuming that you need to plug your ARGB connector over here and here, you don't have to use the extension cable. See, you can just remove this. Instead of plugging to the extension cable, right, you can connect this end here from the fan directly to the core cable. See, it's much shorter. So from here, right, you can just plug your ARGB connector to your motherboard and your PWM header, which is for the fan, to your motherboard. And this, right, will tuck to the back, and it's definitely long enough to reach your PSU SATA cable. Another thing I'd like to emphasize is actually when you're mounting these fans on the radiator itself, right? Now, one thing they have done very nicely is that when you screw the radiator screws for the fan to mount it on the radiator, take a look at this over here. You will just countersunk in. So you leave ample length to screw to your radiator. Also, having this daisy chain mechanism itself, right, assuming that this is mounted on the radiator itself, and as and when, let's say this is plugged, as and when, let's say one of the fan is faulty and you need to do replacement, you don't have to dismantle the whole thing and to mess, untying the zip tie on your daisy chain cables and such. What is needed, for example, let's say the top fan is faulty, you just need to unplug, remove the screws, take this out, replace a new one, screw it back on, and to plug it back on. So I like this function a lot. Just an illustration of the ARGB on the fans itself. As you can see, these are all the simple patterns. Of course, you can control the static, the breathing effects, or even the wave effects itself. This is basically just mix of the ARGB colors. As you can see, it diffused nicely to the blade. Before I conduct the thermal test itself, I will let you hear the noise of these fans. At this moment, this is at idle, and the microphone at the back here, right, is 1 feet away from the radiator fans. So this is at idle, and this is how it sounds like when I ramp up the fans. And this is at idle again. And this is when it's loaded at max 1600 RPM. Before showing you the thermal results of how well this Deepcool FC120 fans perform, I will need to let you know what are the components that I'll be using. For the FC120 fans itself, I have mounted in a Liquid Freezer 2 360 liquid AIO coming from Arctic. And the components that we use will be a 13th gen Intel Core i7-13700K processor with a Asus's ROG Strix B760F gaming Wi-Fi motherboard, and the RAMs I'll be using a 32GB kit coming from Team Group, and the max speed will be at 6000 MHz. Now, showing you the configuration itself, what I've done is under AI Tweak itself, I've enabled XMP profile so that my DDR5 RAMs can run at 6000 MHz with this timing over here. Next is I will have to limit the internal CPU power management. Reason being, right, if I am going to let it run at auto with the long duration power package and the short duration power package, the temperature you're going to see will be more than 95 degrees Celsius up to 100 degrees Celsius. Because Singapore is a very hot country whereby our room temperature right now is in fact 31 degrees Celsius, so I wouldn't want that to happen. Instead, I will limit the power drawn for the processor to draw from the PSU itself, right, is 235 watts, as you can see over here. So it should be hovering around 78 to 80 plus kind of degrees, which is okay. And besides this, right, I have done an offset on the B core itself. As you can see, I've done the offset. Now this is just to let the processor determine how much wattage is needed in order to run at 5 gig. So it's more or less the wattage itself, and I've done the offset of 0.175 milliwatt. Now for the fan itself, right, since it's going to run at full load, I will just run the fan speed at full, which you can see over here. I'm going to switch this to full. So this will be the setting that is done on this motherboard itself before I conduct the test. Now let me take you to Windows and to explain what are the applications that I will be using. There are a total of 3 applications which I make use of in order to do this thermal test itself. First will be the Cinebench R23, whereby I will run a 10 minutes run and to show you the live recording. Next will be the Unigine Valley benchmark, whereby I show you all these tests. By the way, these tests are in fact pulled off from Hardware Info 64, another application. So it does show you the CPU temperature, the motherboard temperature, the VRM temperature, the RAMs, which is the DDR5 26, and followed by the M.2 temperature. For the core frequency itself, right, when I conduct the test itself, you will see that the core usage will be at 100 max, which is full load, and you'll be able to witness how much it can hover or to sustain at this frequency. Right now it's actually 5.287, which is running on the background. So when I toggle the Cinebench itself, right, it might move a bit. Now coming to the CPU power drawn itself, as mentioned to you in the UEFI, I have limited the power limit to 235 watt, but it doesn't mean that it will show as over here CPU power drawn to be at max 235. Reason being, I have done an offset on the V core, so this processor will pull whatever is needed, which is over here, which is going to hover around 198 to 200 watt instead of pulling the max 235 watt. So as and when you need the power to pull and to sustain at 5 gig, right, it will reflect over here. Now coming to the CPU itself, this is not the CPU but the CPU fan, which are the FC120. As you can see over here, right, this is the max speed, which is at 1600 RPM. So at all time when I conduct the test itself, right, it will run at 1600 RPM. And over on my right over here, this is the actual live feed of the system that's running. Just to show you that during the test itself, right, I will not tamper any parts or even feeder in the UEFI itself. Having said this, right, there is another weakness over here whereby it shows you the CPU temperature. As you can see, this graph is in fact moving. And speaking of which, right, how do I do the test and to show you the results? First off, since this system is newly installed, I will first run 2 runs of 10 minutes just to let the cold plate of the AIO to cure with the IHS of the processor itself, and also at the meantime to give a rough run on the fans itself, let it season. So once this after the 20 minutes, right, I will let it sit for 5 minutes to let it idle. Then I will conduct the actual 10 minutes whereby you will witness that 10 minutes in a fast forward pace. Then after which I will talk about the results. I've run the first 10 minutes to let it warm up on the system itself, and right now in fact it's idle after 5 minutes. Without further ado, I will do the recording and let's begin. As you have witnessed throughout the whole benchmark itself, the CPU core frequency can sustain at 5.2 gig, not an issue, when it's doing its 100% load, and the power max drawn is 208 watt as I witnessed. And as mentioned to you, the CPU fan is running at 1600 RPM, which is max. Looking at the temperature itself, right, not too bad. In fact, it does hover around 83 to 84 degrees Celsius, around there, and a sustainable temperature for the motherboard, which is at 34 to 35 degrees Celsius, and the VRMs did not went beyond 50 degrees Celsius, which is good. As for the DR5 RAMs, right, is 44 and 45 is around there on both 6, which is good too. For the M.2 is running at a consistent of 42 degrees Celsius. Hope you guys have enjoyed what I've shared with you. These are very decent fan. In fact, on the budget side, right, it's above average quality. Based on the fact that when I check the price itself, right, in USD is about $34 to $35, and in Sing dollars will be around $45 to $50. So this will not break your pocket. It does perform decently. And best thing about this fans itself, right, I like the squarish shape, whereby when you combine them together, right, it forms a sturdiness, it doesn't wobble. And another good point about it, whereby if you mount this fan on the radiator itself, if one of this fan are to be faulty, what you need to do is just to unscrew the screws from the fans and to take off the short daisy chain cables, and you can just remove and replace it. Speaking about the daisy chain mechanism, right, I do like this a lot because it doesn't need much attention on cable management. So all you need to do is just to slot all these short cables to one another, then you can just tuck them nicely. See? So you don't have to bother about using additional zip ties to actually do the cable management, which is kind of like a hassle. And furthermore, as mentioned at the earlier point, right, imagine that one of these fans is faulty on the radiator and you have to remove it. You've got to remove everything, as in like to cut off the zip ties and such. So with this said, right, this mechanism works very well. Another bonus point of it is that it does come, though it's actually 7, some of you might like it, some of you might not like it, though it comes with a 7-pin connector, right, it does provide with the extension. And as I illustrated to you, right, one thing good about this fan is that it doesn't draw current from your motherboard, on the safe side. So this is delivery done by Deepcool. They have thought about it. So if you were to daisy chain more and more fans, right, not an issue, even using one connection point. Reason being, right, the power is being drawn directly from the PSU itself. Alright, once again, I'd like to thank Deepcool to have provided this fans for me to share with you guys. And for those of you who are actually new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you do like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. Till then, take care, goodbye, see ya.